Are you ready for even more dark alternates and more unlimited alternate Spider-Mans? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. I'm here to pick up where my old friend Jack left off. Man, I miss that dude. I'm saying that like he's dead. He's not dead, but he's not here anymore. Sad. Today we'll be discussing even more dark alternate versions of Spider-Man on this part 4 of the series. And if you think there is anyone I missed, maybe check out parts 1 through 3, as I'm sure they're somewhere on there, and let us know how much you love them in the comments below. Alright, now let's get counting. Number 10. Savage Spider-Man. This Spider-Man hails from Savage Land. When he was just a child, he and his parents flew over Savage Land when their plane exploded. Although his parents were killed, young Peter Parker survived. He landed in a nest of giant spiders who raised him as their own, building up his immunity to their spider venom by biting him. That's what happened. Peter Parkerman would grow up to become Savage Spider-Man, a guardian of the Savage Land, who would later be recruited to join the multiversal Spider Army in the fight against the Inheritors. Savage Spider-Man has his origins explained and was first introduced in Vault of Spiders issue number 1. Vault of Spiders. Number 9. The other old man Spider-Man. The other one. We've already talked about the senile old Spider-Man who basically goes insane in his old age and is severely depressed due to the city being overrun with corrupt politicians and criminals and due to losing Mary Jane and how that happened or why that happened. But we haven't yet talked about the old, seemingly immortal Spider-Man from Earth 18236. This version of the character is so old he doesn't even remember how long he's lived in the retirement home he now finds himself in. His life was extended after he received a blood transfusion from Deadpool, and in this alternate reality he is confined to a wheelchair while remaining impressively dexterous and strong. The old man Deadpool of this reality ends up in the same retirement home and the two team up together. I don't know about you, but I think a reality where Spider-Man is forced to team up with Deadpool, possibly forever because he can now live so long, is a pretty dark one, at least from Peter's perspective. You can find this version of Spider-Man and this version of Deadpool in their team-up series Spider-Man/Deadpool in issue 26. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, just a quick reminder to click like, click, and do the other things too, like comment, subscribe, you know, all the things. Thank you. Number 8. Web-Slinger. The Web-Slinger is an alternate version of Spider-Man who was first introduced in Amazing Spider-Man in 2014 in issue number 9, but we later learn more of his origins in Vault of Spiders issue number 1. Here we discover how Patrick O'Hara and his horse Widow got their spider-like abilities. A spider that had become exposed to an elixir bit both of them one day, granting them miraculous abilities. This elixir had been made by Patrick's colleague Dr. Michael Morbius, who made and sold elixirs and participated in a traveling show along with the gunslinger. However, Morbius was transformed into a vampire when he himself consumed the elixir and began to feed on human children. Patrick was forced to confront Morbius, who sacrificed himself in a laboratory explosion, rushing towards it instead of away to make sure that the people would be safe from him forever. Tragic. Number 7. Mayhem. Mayhem is an alternate version of another alternate version of Spider-Man. It's a lot of alternates on alternates. The alternate version they're an alternate of is Spider-Girl of the Earth 982 reality, aka MC2. Mayhem is April Parker, the clone of May Parker, Spider-Man and Mary Jane's daughter. April was initially antagonistic when she awoke from her stasis, but was soon after brought around to the side of good and even integrated into the Parker family, becoming like a sister to May and taking the name April. At school, May explained their identical appearance by saying April was her cousin. However, April would eventually turn to the dark side once more, taking up the mantle Mayhem, after becoming jealous of May. April believed there could only be one Spider-Girl woman, Spider-Woman. Number 6. Spiders-Man, Earth X. Spiders-Man of Earth X is different from the Spiders-Man we talked about in part 3 of this series, who hailed from the Earth 11580. Spiders-Man of Earth X, or the reality of Earth 9997, is a villain who ended up joining the Skull, and used his abilities to torment the Skull's prisoners. We don't know what his life was like before, we merely know that a mutation likely caused him to turn into a lizard-like being whose skin looks similar to the pattern of Spider-Man's suit. He has illusion casting powers which allow him to cast energy webs that cause very realistic illusions, making his victims relive the most tragic moment of their lives. Number 5. Ultimatum. Miles Morales of Earth 1610 has not been integrated into the 616 world, and because of that and because of his awesomeness, we often associate him with the main continuity, but he isn't the actual Miles of Earth 616. We have one of those, as a matter of fact, who is in fact not a hero, but instead a criminal who once worked for the Kingpin. He ended up being sent to the reality of Earth 1610, but made his way back to Earth 616 eventually. Returning, he now had knowledge of the lives people had lived in 1610 before the world was reformed as Battleworld, and then was later deconstructed and returned to normal by Reed Richards. His plan was to get rid of Miles and his family, sending them back to their home reality. However, it didn't really work out when he put it into action. Still, Ultimatum could be waiting for the right moment to strike again, and also boasts of having the immensely powerful Green Goblin of Earth 1610 at his beck and call, who also came along with him to Earth 616. Number 4. The Lizard. The Lizard was originally Peter Parker in the reality of Earth 65. Peter was a friend of Gwen's and wanted nothing more than to be just like his favorite hero, Spider-Woman. He worked on a serum that would help him to become like her and also help him to stand up to the students who mistreated him, which Gwen often did for Peter whenever she noticed that he was being teased. Unfortunately, the serum did not work as Peter expected and turned him into the monster and villain known as the Lizard. A monster which Gwen, as Spider-Woman, was forced to kill, only to find out after that all along it had been her friend Peter, who'd simply turned himself into the Lizard in the first place because he wanted to be like her. Oh my goodness. It's a pretty tragic story just all around. For Gwen, for Peter, ugh. Number 3. Venom. This version of Spider-Man comes to us from what we're referring to temporarily as Earth 848. That's a temporal reality number though, so don't get too attached to it because it's probably gonna change. As implied by the name of this point, he is from the What If inspired series Spider-Man Spider's Shadow, where we imagine what would have happened if Peter hadn't decided to part ways with the symbiotic black suit we've come to know as Venom, but instead decided to stay bonded to it, basically becoming Venom. Here, Spider-Man becomes a merciless anti-hero slash villain who kills his enemies, and the Sinister Six must band together in order to try and survive. Well, a version of the Sinister Six at least. He also sports a pretty sweet beard here. Beards make you dark and edgy, right? I don't know, I've never had one, so let me know. Number 2. Black Suit Mr. Fantastic. If you thought Peter Parker keeping the black suit was a bad idea, wait till you see who else gets their hands on it on Earth TRN 848 in Spider-Man Spider's Shadow. None other than Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. Well, he isn't really intending to get his hands on it, it's more like it gets its tendrils on him after blaming Reed for causing Peter to leave it. The black symbiote suit then forcefully bonds to Reed and takes control of his brilliant mind, using it to extract its own offspring. So it's likely only going to get a lot more dark in this series before it gets any brighter. If it gets any brighter. I guess we'll see what Chip Zdarsky has in store for us. Number 1. Carnage. While we might know Aunt May's alternate spider totem persona as a hero, the one who hails from the reality of Earth 3123, Spider-Man, she also has her own dark spider alternate. We made this version of May Riley who goes by the mantle Carnage in Spider-Verse issue number 2 out of 2019. Here, Spider-Man finds herself attacked by her dark alternate, Carnage, who comes through a portal into Mam's reality, and hails herself from Earth 20143. This version of Aunt May is instead bonded with the Carnage symbiote and believes firmly in spreading chaos and death throughout the multiverse. It takes May working in tandem with all her good counterparts across the multiverse to fight back this villainous version of herself, an alternate Spider-Person. Who do you think is the darkest alternate version of Spider-Man? What alternate Spider-Man story is your favorite? If you could see any alternate Spider-Person get their own dark, evil alternate, who would you like to see that happen to? Let us know in the comments below. Personally would love like a Spider-Punk dark alternate. That would be pretty cool. And now it is time to turn to some comments from one of our latest videos, Top 10 Superheroes You Didn't Know Were Bisexual. Raven Coyote Stories comments, Deadpool actually makes out with non-humanoid beings, blobs, strange tentacle beasts, etc. This is true. He also once married an alien that kind of looked like a hippo, I want to say? I don't know if that's offensive to that alien, me describing them that way, but they did kind of look like a hippo, so yeah. Sunstar responds, great job on the list, Amanda. I wasn't aware of Catman's orientation or of Huntress's maybe flirtation. I know, those are both two really cool things. I also learned about Catman's orientation through researching that one, and yeah, Huntress I've always been suspicious of. Danny PJR asks, who really didn't know Loki was bi? Come on people, it's clear that the biggest love of his life is himself. I mean, that is a good point, Danny, but I just felt like I had to mention it because it came up in the Loki series and there were a lot of people that were shocked, possibly people who maybe haven't read some of the comics or just aren't as familiar with Norse mythology, but yeah, there are people that are surprised. So, and that's fine. You can be surprised if you want, or you cannot be surprised. I'm fine with it either way. And that's all the time we have for comments today. Be sure to comment below for a chance to have your thoughts and feels shouted out in a future video. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you as always to stay nerdy, YouTube.